Yeah, I can also speak a little bit to that. I mean, I think that with the employers, there are some employers, maybe to give them the benefit of the doubt, who aren't familiar with what the law requires. But I do think that there are a set of employers who do know what the law requires and just want to profit off of those underpayments and think they can get away with it, and often do because the workers are too scared to come forward. They're very grateful to have the job. They don't think they can find another job. They're worried to lose their job if they speak up or say anything or file. Certainly, if they file a claim, they're scared to lose their job. Most of the folks that we file claims for have already left the job, and it's only after that they've left the job that they feel like they can come forward and actually enforce the rights and get the back pay that they're owed. But even there, many workers are scared because the community is small, that if they step forward and file a claim, future employers will find out about it and they won't be able to find another job. So I think also with enforcement efforts, they have to be paired with community groups and with community groups that do have trust in the community that can reassure them that the labor agency is there for them and help the workers through that claims process. I think sometimes you do have inspections happen where the labor enforcement agency goes into a work site and the workers there actually don't tell the truth because they're scared, because they're unfamiliar with the labor enforcement agency and don't fully understand it, and also because they're afraid of the retaliation.
Yeah.
Did you want to add a question?
Can I add something?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's easy to villainize, owners sometimes in this situation because it feels like there's laws in place and that should be abided by. But I want to emphasize a cultural piece is like when immigrants come to this country, their family members is going to suggest you should open this shop because this is how I did it. And then they'll share their best practices, which is, kind of stays in the community, stays in the family. And so everyone just kind of shrugs when some of these practices are violated because they're like, everyone else is doing it. My cousin taught me how to run this shop, and that's how they're doing it. They're not getting vacation days off on Christmas because my cousin's shop is not getting Christmas days off either. So I think it's deeply embedded in the culture, and people are just used to doing it the way they have been doing it. And the language barrier is definitely they're not getting the information. They're not understanding the information the way because of the language barriers in the information, the laws, wherever it may be.
Ms. Assemblymember, Senator Nguyen, I'm going to put you right after Assemblymember Asajian.
I actually don't have a question.
Okay, can I just finish with him if he has any other questions? Assemblymember Daly, he has the floor right now.
I really appreciate you trying to answer the question, but we have laws. I'm a business owner, and I fear the government, and I ran for office to try to straighten it out some. But people need to be paid their wage. There's a set of laws that we have, and we need to enforce those laws. So if it's a matter of getting folks who speak the right languages in the enforcement area, we need to do that. And I don't care if you're legal, illegal, whatever. It's the law, and you shall pay. And it's really not right. And we should be aggressively going after these folks who are not doing what is right to their employees.
We definitely agree with you. There's no place for any of this, and regardless of your immigration status, you are owed minimum wages and you are protected under the California Labor Code. We want to we work to help those groups know that
pay workers' comp and payroll taxes and all the things that everybody else has to pay. I often think in my own business that I'm working for my employees, and they have a lot of rights, and they're put there, most of them, for good reason. So I would like to see those enforced in every aspect of California.
Assemblymember Asajian, and then Senator Nguyen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of questions I ask them one at a time. When Cal/OSHA has been involved, and I'm familiar with their operation, what was the results of their involvement?
Oftentimes, so Cal/OSHA can respond to accidents or complaints. In this industry, it's typically worker complaints, and so we'll review the complaint and go out and inspect. The most common violations have been failure to have an appropriate injury and illness prevention plan. You guys both probably know that all employers have to have one, and it's tailored to their work situation, making sure the workers are trained and informed about and hazards are minimized. And also in this industry, it's been about communicating the dangers of hazardous chemicals, making sure you have what's called, yes, exactly, master data safety sheet, and informing the worker of what's in the chemicals that they're using and have that on site. So, and communicating proper training.
So, because the finding is that exists, those problems exist, do they on their own then keep going on to every shop, that every nail and every salon that there is, because the problem apparently exists, or they only go to that one area that the complaint came from?
We do targeted inspections that are sort of randomized, and you'll see many enforcement agencies do this. They're strategic, so hopefully with one inspection and one enforcement or several enforcement citations, you can kind of show the rest of the community that there are laws out there and that we're out there to cite, and encouraging workers to come out. We certainly have not inspected every nail salon in California, but we definitely respond to complaints and accidents, and we've worked with groups, some of which are here today, to get information out there to both workers and employers.
Speaking as an employer, I feel like we're going from one extreme to the other. We're so conscientious that every 2 hours they get their 10-minute break, their lunch break, everything is registered and reported, so that in case of somebody comes in, knocks on our door and want to look at the books, it's all there. Now that this is public, would your agency just go on and do what needs to be done? That way it will save them to come forward, and the fear of being immigrant or losing a job or maybe deporting depends on their status that they're here for.
Certainly, we definitely believe in having a proactive approach, and we have been doing that through working on some of the safety standards and also working with the community. And these laws are first and foremost to protect workers, but they're there to help level the playing field for the good employers who do make that investment and take the time like you and other employers here in the state do. So we take our mission seriously. Of course, we always want to do better. I think we should do better, but we do believe in a proactive approach.
I mean, we can spend the whole day going back and forth, but I understand the time frame we're in. But thank you.
Thank you. Senator Nguyen, did you have an...
Yeah, one other thing is, we've taught, just maybe try to answer, or if you can help, don't you think that the issue here has to do with the definition of an independent contractor and a worker? And I think that's where the problem lies. None of these workers or none of these business owners want to violate any laws. I don't think anybody comes to this country wanting to violate any laws. But we got to work on how to define what's an independent worker, an independent contractor versus what a W-2 is. Because a lot of these, I'm looking more of the industry. Wouldn't that be where the issue falls? Is I think there needs to be that definition, that defining of both of those, so that it's clear to the owners and to the worker who they are. Because right now it is so mixed in. I mean, I've gone to a lot of places, met with owners and workers in small town halls and meetings, and that's really where it is. No one really understands what this is. Well, but the problem, though, Assemblyman, is this. If you were I'll give you an example. If you were if you cut hair, or hairstylist, you have two options. One, you work for the salon. Okay, you're a W-2. And if you work for the salon, you help out with cleaning up and stuff as well, right? Like us, as when I was a waitress, you help out clean up the counter after hours and make sure the food's prepared and everything's set aside for the next day or for the next shift coming in. Okay. But the hairstylist, though, also the second option they have is they can rent a station. But by renting a station, though, in a hairstylist, you bring in your own client, you set your own schedule. You get to use the shampoo and some of the common goods in the store, but you pay a monthly rent for that place, $500 or $1,000 usually on average. In the nail salon, the problem you have is this: some of them consider themselves as a 1099, and they get paid 1099. Then they want to be 1099 because most of their money comes from, at the end of the day, is after hours or the weekend. It's not during the weekdays because most of us ladies do work, and so we're not going there getting our nails done at this hour, right? It's usually after hours or on the weekend. And so what happened, though, is that they don't pay a rent for that one station, and they get walk-ins are shared by everybody, just like being a waitress. As a waitress, you get station 1, 2, 3, 4. The first walk-in comes in, they're my customers. The next walk-in is going to be, Assemblyman Chairwoman Gonzalez. That's her next station, and then it goes on. But that's where the definition is that it's so confusing, and I got confused when I went to the workers and the employer and met with them. Is that there's no clear definition. You could be in violation if you're an independent contractor and you happen to be the only one there in the store at that moment that's available to pick up the phone. You're in violation because you're not allowed to pick up the phone. You're in violation if everybody in the store is busy and there's a customer walks in and you're sitting there and you can't service that person. If you service that person, you're in violation of the labor law. Okay. See, that's where the definition, if you're a hairstylist, it's very defined. A nail salon, it's not. Or a nail technician.
And I don't want to get into details, but we could probably. I think one of the problems that I've seen in knowing independent contractor law fairly well is that I have seen very few nail salons that are truly acting as in a situation because you usually pay the owner. You don't pay the individual technician the same way you do the hairdresser. And that who you're paying is also one of those indicators. I think, though, that maybe hopefully in the next panel and as we further this discussion, there, you have all those number of ways you can determine if somebody's an independent contractor or an employee. And as we see in California law, we just passed and got signed a law that, we're starting to individually go industry by industry and saying they are employees. And the reason we've had to do that is because a lot of employers have just determined by their own rules. And we can't have that. And especially in an immigrant workforce where there's no check. Quite frankly, and we see that in a lot of different, in my community, and a lot of immigrant communities, the same problem.
The law is such that as long as I tell you where to come to work, what hours to work, that you're my employee, you're not a contractor.
Right.
So that law exists prior even to the law that you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm wondering how is it that they can get away with it, and are we still in California?
And I want to remind you, the NFL got away with it for decades with their cheerleaders. That's why we just passed a law and had it signed saying you can't do that. I mean, that was so clear. They weren't making up when the game time was, and yet that happened in California in a high visibility kind of situation with non-immigrant workers for decades. So this is like a larger problem, but I totally, you're a good employer. So you know the law. It is. I think Assemblywoman Camposasso has a...
And I also want to be able to leave time for the next panel. So in this discussion, first of all, I appreciate everything that has been said and how do we make it work. But in the discussion, I also don't want the fact that the advocates and the individual that works in the nail salon, there's a culture that has been passed on from generations to generations. And how do we address that so that we can start changing, from what I'm hearing from you, changing the culture so that there is no retaliation against the employee who decides that and gives them and empowers them to be able to go through the mainstream and yet be able to find another job if there is a bad apple in this industry. And I hear that, and I know that you're reiterating that because it has it goes very deep from generation to generation, and your example was very clear. The other question that I have is, we talk about, the minimum wage, and we want to make sure that that continues to be enforced. And at some point, we will have a minimum wage that's a living wage so that people can live here. But it also goes back to how do we enforce that? And from your perspective, have you looked at this particular industry since it's operating a little different? And is this driven by complaints, or are you all proactive in going out? Or and I think that probably goes to not having enough resources. So can you talk to that?
Definitely. Certainly, there have been and many of them are here today, and also on the next panel as well, some worker advocacy groups that have been leaders in this area, and we've worked on several forums with them over the years, including one about a month ago down in Santa Ana area to do outreach to workers and employers. And I think to go into what one of my other panelists said earlier, I think partnering with those community groups that have that trust of some of these populations is helpful. I think one of the main things that we've been talking about today is really making sure people know what the law is, both workers, and then hopefully gaining their trust. We do have anti-retaliation protection, and we do enforce, but it's, again, helping the worker trust that process and feel safe coming forward.
I want to ask a budget question. So within your department, is there funds to be able to go out and partner with these groups to do the work with you? Or, I mean, it's a great idea, but unless we're able to do it, so I'm asking, is there something within your department that has the funds to be able to do this?
We do have some funding. It depends on kind of on what level you're talking about. Certainly right now, we have staff that do go out on the weekends or in the evenings when people are able to come, when workers aren't working, although many of these workers are working 7 days a week to do that kind of outreach.
So it's not a set, it's if they can, or...
I can talk to our communications office and definitely get back to you
Thank you.
Provide more detail.
First, Assemblymember Dodd, and then we'll get back to you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for bringing this to our attention today. I think this is, it's been eye-opening to me, and as a former business person, and certainly understanding what my colleagues across the room from me have been talking about this morning, I wonder if. Clearly this is a cultural issue. The percentage of, in this particular industry, Vietnamese descendants, either that are owners or employees, is quite high. And I'm just wondering, and maybe this has been done, but is this something that, perhaps an outreach, with brochures or something like that for the employee that kind of reminds them, first employers, that reminds them the laws and the rules of the land, just so. Yeah. But something that's like frequently asked questions. This is the law of the land, and then finally to employees, and working with the community groups, and maybe the state is one that's printing out these brochures or statements that community groups can go out to these. And certainly we have the addresses of every single licensed owner operator and then also employee, correct?
Other agencies may have that. We don't necessarily have that. Barbering Cosmetology, I think, would have the licensed.
Okay, so we at the state do have those tools available to us, and I just think it's communication. We're going to get far more done in this area by using the tools that are just simple and getting the word out there, and it's all about communication as it is in so many other areas. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm sorry that I have to leave early.
No, thank you, and I think you're bringing up a good point. That's when,
Just quickly, every time we hire somebody, they have to read the employee handbook and sign that they read it and understood, and we have to give them the proper timing. We can't rush them that here it is, give me back to me in 10 minutes. And the posters about their rights to wages, minimum wage.
But we all do. We got to remember, we sign a lot of things all the time, and you don't necessarily read everything you sign.
And whoever has actually read the poster,
problem,
I want to know.
All right. Thank you.
I'll start my anti-poster brigade later. I think, Assemblymember.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I first want to say to Ms. Tufam, Gaman, thank you, because you represent 100,000 nail salon workers in the state of California. You represent 250,000 cosmetology workers in our state, and I think we all appreciate how courageous it is for you to step up. And so I just want to thank you for being a voice on this. And I do want to give you a chance to, if you have something that you want to add. And then I have one other comment. Would you like to add something?
Yeah, can I talk? Tôi muốn có cơ hội để thay đổi chủ và nail, nhưng mà tôi có thể là đi đến tiệm để nói chuyện thêm một người nữa cùng tôi đi, để nói chuyện về cho chủ và thợ nail hiểu biết thêm á, nhưng mà cái tài trợ thì không có. Thì
she was sharing about her experience in terms of like outreach to the community. Tu has been going to nail salons on her own account to talk to other workers for their expanded knowledge, spreading the knowledge to other community members about some of the things that she learned about the safety and health, and also labor workers, right? But all of that has been on her own time and volunteering, and there's not a lot of resources where in our community that we can do that right now.